I now give the floor to His Excellency Ramtane Lamamra, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Algeria. You have the floor, sir.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, Mr. President, it gives me honor and the privilege to address you on behalf of Algeria and congratulate you on your election President of the 71st session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. And we do share your priorities identified for this session. We confirm our commitment to work with you to achieve those priorities. I would like also to express Algeria's gratitude for your predecessor for the initiatives he has taken when he presided over the session. Mr. President, we assume the session in a turbulent global situation that raises concerns in addition to the old conflicts for whom no prospects of solution appear. There are new threats for international peace and security, and that requires urgent and serious action. The international community witnesses waves of mass displacement unprecedented since the Second World War. A high-level meeting was dedicated for this theme 3 days ago in order to pinpoint the developments in this serious phenomenon. The images of thousands of persons who have no choices other than taking perilous journeys cannot be limited to a phenomenon of migration, and conventional solutions cannot be used here, and I mean exclusion. In fact, this situation is a test for all of us. In this respect, the President of the Republic, His Excellency Abdelaziz Bouteflika, when he presided the 29th session of the United Nations General Assembly from this very podium, and I quote, "The notion of globalization is a moral necessity. That means racial barriers shall fall in front of humanity, like all differences in social and economic conditions." End of quote. We can conclude from this notion expressed by President Bouteflika more than 40 years ago that the ability of the international community to overcome such phenomena are staying to test. That is including solidarity actions in which Algeria contributes, as well as finding permanent solutions that reflect our commitment to the values and principles upon which the United Nations has been founded. In order to address such kind of challenges and learning from the painful lessons of World War II, the founders of the United Nations thought of a collective security order based on equality, and it is to be permanently enhanced to avoid narrow interest and intolerance in all their forms. If there is a main task that we have to champion in the United Nations, it is for this organization to be the main catalyst of the hopes of all peoples. Our organization given it is moral and moral presence, has to gain all the respect from all member states. Our organization should not be a source, should be a source of inspiration of all humanity in situations of crisis when it comes to the right to self-determination, respect for human rights, and peaceful conflict resolution, and all other principles enshrined in the Charter. It is clear more than ever before that the United Nations is facing new unprecedented challenges. It is now high time to stress that the United Nations is a unique body that can undertake its role to mobilize the required consensus to overcome all these challenges. It is unfair to place responsibility on all the organization, on our organization, for all violations taking place in the world that make it criticized by member states, because our organization is reflective only of the political will of its member states. And for this reason, we cannot postpone indefinitely the reform and modernization of UN mechanisms. Algeria has called for this repeatedly. In this respect, I can only express our satisfaction with the outcome of the non-aligned movement, which finished its summit in Venezuela, when it stressed the urgent need for this reform. Reform of the United Nations has become of special importance. We are required to provide answers to a simple question, which is if the mechanisms that have been put in place at the time of World War II still valid, given that most world peoples back then were under occupation, and international balances and political policies were different back then. The answer is we need to redesign the entire global governance in political, economic, security, and environment fields. This is not impossible. The wise consensus on the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals is the evidence that reform can be achieved by negotiations, and it is only possible, it is fruitful and laudable, and this is a guarantee for success. Mr. President, the geographical space and challenges for development are widening, in particular in Africa and the Middle East. There is no single person who is immune from the current security threats, as is becoming evident every day by threats of international terrorism. Doubling efforts to bring peace in Syria, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, and South Sudan, Central African Republic, as well as a peaceful settlement of the situation in DRC and Burundi, is a moral and political duty upon the international community. As to the Palestinian occupied territories and the just cause of Palestine, the inaction on the part of international community to have the sole viable solution, including the full recognition of the rights of Palestinian people on its occupied territories that has been occupied since 1967, and establishing an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital, is only evident of the failure of the contemporary international order. As to our Maghreb region, which combines peoples that share lots of commonalities. The path to peace in Western Sahara, led by the United Nations, experienced a couple of negative developments this year. The United Nations, and in particular, the Security Council, lost some of their powers, which threatens the integrity of this path undertaken by the United Nations. Such a worrying situation stresses once again the urgent need to settle such a dispute according to international legitimacy and implementing the inalienable right of the Sahrawi to self-determination. Hence, in this particular situation, we would like to stress once again that the United Nations is still able to commit to succeed in this situation and the occupation in Western Sahara. Mr. President, the adoption of the 2030 Development Agenda and the Addis Ababa Program of Action are a progress that gives hope in embodying our noble goal, that is to ensure that no one is left behind. The international economic expectations and outlooks by international organizations do not make us optimistic, as they refer to the magnitude of challenges they face and the threats to the chances of succeeding in our efforts in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular reducing poverty. In addition to that, such prospects refer to the decline in investments in developing countries, and that jeopardizes the amount of ODA, which is already in decline for a couple of years now, in addition to the inclination by rich countries to reduce these official development aids, which will be more detrimental as financial needs of developing countries are increasing. In this respect, developed countries have to change consumption patterns that impose production patterns to reduce production costs in developing countries. The commitments we made to reduce inequality require a concrete transformation in economic models of rich countries that will take into consideration interests of all. The same principle has to apply to the arrangements for technology transfer to developing countries, which is an urgent necessity if we truly are to enhance national capabilities. In this connection, the highest priority has to be given to Africa to enable it to fulfill its needs in relation to infrastructure, to achieve basic needs like water, electricity, and to integrate African countries in income-generating activities at the global level and in economic competitiveness. Mr. President, Algeria integrated its development efforts in this framework from this spirit of self-reliance, relying on our own resources by utilizing innovative financial tools. What Algeria asks from the United Nations in terms of reform, openness, and transparency is applied actually in Algeria in itself, given the strong push by the president of Algeria, Algeria adopted a constitutional amendment that ensures democratic gains that aim to enhance rule of law, individual freedoms, institutional role of opposition parties, liberate national economic capacities, empower women, and entrench Amazighi language as formal national language. This is an important step in our historic path, and this will help building a quiet, open, and strong community. And since Algeria is strong and live in peace, it hence can effectively contribute in bringing peace, security, stability in its close neighboring countries and the far neighboring countries as well. This is a renewed commitment by Algeria in our organization, the United Nations. Such belief and such commitment towards the United Nations have been proved by Mr. Ban Ki-moon, whose tenure is approaching to an end, and who has undertaken his responsibility so dedicatedly and achieved great results. He has proved that such a task cannot be impossible for people like him, who would spare no effort, using their hearts and minds to contribute to achieve the aspired goals, the noble goals that he committed when he was selected to achieve. So we would like to thank His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, and we wish him all success in his upcoming endeavors. Thank you, Mr. President, for your attentive listening, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you.
I thank the Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs and of International Cooperation of Algeria. I now give